Hey everybody, welcome to tip 99 in the series 101 tips to ace your promotional exam. As a reminder, my website has a lot of great free stuff on it. Check it out if you haven't done so already. And the series is based on my latest book from Fire Engineering Books and Videos, titled the same name, available off their website as well as mine below. So, tip 99. As we wind down here in the series of tips, I'm hoping you're finding some value to the information that I'm sharing and discussing, and hopefully it's inspiring you to be the best that you can be. But this is going to sound a little bit maybe negative, and I don't want it to come across the way, but something you got to think of at least. Realize you may have to test outside your fire department to get promoted. Let that sink in. We all probably know those people that are friends of ours, maybe within our own department or maybe within other departments, where they've taken test after test after test, and they just can't seem to get promoted. Or hired, but especially promoted. You know, there comes a point where you maybe have to think about, okay, maybe for whatever reason, you're not meant to get promoted in that department. Doesn't mean elsewhere, and I think that's that challenging part. I wanted to be fire chief of our department years ago. I served as a firefighter for about 5 years, got promoted to captain for about 5 years, battalion chief for about 5 years, then got promoted to deputy chief for about 10 years. And then in that process of deputy chief, I took the assistant chief's test, fire chief's test, and I thought I'd make a good fit and I think I ought to get the position. Wrong. Hey, you know what? Things work out for reasons. The guys that got those positions are doing a great job. More power to them. I'll support them to the day I die. Hey, that's the way it works. I'm okay with it. I'm also realizing I probably wasn't a good fit for the fire chief or assistant chief position. Nothing personal against me, but I think those guys are better fits because of the politics, the challenges, and how they're dealing with it. But anyway, this is something that I never really thought of because I was loyal to my department. I had that aspiration to move up internally. And I could have taken many other fire chief tests or deputy chief, assistant chief tests when I was still a battalion chief. I probably could have been promoted in another department locally, or especially if I didn't just, if I expanded my horizons and said, you know what, shit, I'll go anywhere. There are those people, and there are many people that are successful like that, but it's not for everyone to have to uproot your family and everything else. And I wasn't ready to uproot my family. If I was going to move, I'd want to be local. Okay. But anyway, when I got passed over for assistant chief, which was our gateway to fire chief, that was my realization that, guess what? I'm never going to be the fire chief in our department unless something bad happens. I don't wish that upon anybody. And I may get the number 2 position, the assistant chief, but I'm probably going to stay as a deputy chief. And you know what? That's not a bad thing. And I'm glad it worked out that way. But again, at that time, I was disappointed that I didn't get the fire chief position. But the best thing it did to me was lit a fire under me that go, you know what? If I want to be a fire chief, it ain't going to happen here. So you know what? I better go find a spot elsewhere. And in some ways, I was so loyal to county fire that I didn't want to have that perception of, well, if I test out, some may think of it as disloyalty. Well, it's not disloyalty. You got to do what's best for you and your family. Ultimately, that's what it comes down to. Seriously, you got to do what's best for you and your family. Now, when I made that decision to take my first fire chief's test at another department, the best advice I heard from one of my mentors was make sure you get your fire chief's blessing. I'm like, fire chief's blessing? The same guy that didn't promote me to assistant chief? Yeah. Hell, what's he gonna do now? He didn't promote you to assistant chief, but why should he say no? He probably feels bad. So he'll be happy to sign a letter of reference for you. But it's just joking. But it's like, he goes, because when you come into a fire chief's interview, you better have your fire chief as one of your references, because that shows that you have a good relationship with them and you're not trying to hide things or cover things. And I remember I was scared shitless to go into his office because I didn't know what he'd say. I thought he'd think I'm disloyal. But remember, I also got passed over for assistant chief and fire chief. So when I walked to his office, I go, boss, you got a few seconds? He's like, yeah. I go, I'm thinking about putting in for the fire chief's test over here at this department. And I wasn't sure what he'd say. And it was the best hour conversation I think we ever had. He's like, good for you, and he goes, he goes, hey, it didn't work out here. But he goes, that doesn't mean that you can't be a good fire chief elsewhere. He goes, yeah. I go, would you mind being a reference? He goes, hell yeah. He goes, put me down as a reference, and I walked out of that room going, first of all, I'm glad I didn't hide it from him. Now I know in some departments, if you show your cards and you let others know that you're maybe taking a test elsewhere, that can be looked upon very negatively, and it sucks that it happens that way. So you got to know your own political climate. I mean, I have friends of mine that want to be fire chiefs elsewhere because they can't get promoted internally because their chief doesn't like them, or they're not going, chief's not going anywhere, but they ain't going to tell their chief because the chief will maybe retaliate against them. Sadly, that still exists. But anyway, I told my chief, hey, you know what, I'm taking the fire chief's test. Can I get, you know, your reference? And he was like, yeah. I go, can I get some advice? He's like, yeah. You know, and I'm thinking to myself, why didn't I do this years ago? Because again, I never made it to fire chief, but I had a chance to take a number of tests, did, you know, made top 5, got my feet wet, realized I probably didn't want the position of fire chief, but I at least tried. There are many people that for whatever reason can't get promoted within their own department. It happens. You know, sometimes they can't even get promoted to say the lowest rank, meaning engineer or captain. Then they have to go outside. Hey, it happens. Maybe it's politics, maybe it's your testing process, maybe it's you, maybe it's the people that are on your tests or biased, or there's a lot of reasons. You don't take it personal, but you may have to go outside. I think that's the key. You know, in today's world, it doesn't take much to, you know, looking at my device here, go on the internet, social media. It used to be hard to find departments that are looking for people from the outside to come on in. But you know what? In today's world, you want to be a fire chief, a deputy chief, an assistant chief, heck, even a battalion chief or any level of chief. There's a lot of departments looking for people from the outside. Now be careful, do your homework, because sometimes there's a reason why they're looking for people from the outside, and it may not be good reasons internally. The department may be so screwed up that they're, unless you're a miracle worker, which, and you can walk on water, which most people can't, you're going into a den of snakes, I guess, or a snake pit. And you, not to say you can't be successful, but grass isn't always greener on the other side. But the key is there's always a lot of opportunities. Make sure you do your homework though. But it can be a tough one because again, most of us, I think, are loyal to our current employer, the one that gave us a shot and, you know, is helping support our family. But there comes a time where you still got to look at your future. Like I got to the realization that if fire chief is a true dream of mine, well, it ain't going to happen here because again, the new fire chief, the new assistant chief is like 5 years younger than me, and he's going to be around longer than me. So you know what? It's a mathematical equation. Ain't going to happen. So wish him well. And you know what? If I want it bad enough, I got to try elsewhere. And I think that's that tough decision you've got to make. And sometimes, depending on where you're at, like in the San Francisco Bay Area, there's a lot of opportunities within an hour. But if you're in some rural areas, this may be an issue where you may have to move. Now, if you're single, it makes it a lot easier. If you manage your finances, it makes it a lot easier. But if you got kids in school, spouse that maybe has a job and or a good career, that can be a tough one. So know what you're getting into. And sometimes you may have to just bite the bullet and be happy with what you got. And maybe that's not a bad thing. You know, there's pros and cons of testing to the outside. You know, I've mentioned some of the pros and cons. Obviously, you're leaving the comfort of your own environment that you know, going into potentially an environment you don't know, having to meet new people, learn new policies, best practices, learn about the history so you don't step on yourself and make yourself look like an idiot or get yourself in trouble very quickly because you go sideways with one of the politicians or council members or union president, whoever. There's costs, there's expenses, but you know what? It's your career. So you got to do what's best for you, but weigh the pros, weigh the cons, do your homework, do your research. Hey, many have been successful. For all those people that are out there saying, no one could ever come into our department from the outside and be a chief or a battalion chief or whatever rank. Hey, you know what? There are great, talented people in all ranks that have been successful going from one department to another and sometimes to other departments. Many people. There's also many that have not. There's been some people that are promoted to like fire chief. I'm like, that guy or gal just got fired from their past job for whatever bad stuff. How did they get the job in the new place? Well, you know what? It's amazing how maybe that person was the best fit regardless of their past background. Hey, it happens. Because again, as I mentioned in one of the previous tips, it's all about fit. Strange as that may seem, politics sometimes too. But anyway, hey, many people have been successful. So if you're interested in taking the jump, do your homework, do your research, look into what you're getting. Now the internet's made it very easy because it really is easy to research the politics and everything else. Now you got to fact check things and make sure you're actually reading what you're reading and it's actually true, because trust me, everyone's got an opinion and theirs is always right. But I think one of the keys is one of the most important things to focus on is to not want the badge so bad you'll settle or you're desperate. Because when you're in a promotional process and you're desperate because you've got to get out of your current job or your current position, you don't want that to show to the raters, because it can come across as desperation, because then they're going to be looking at you going, what are you trying to run away from? Because if you don't get the job, it shouldn't be the end of the world, but obviously for you, it would be the end of the world, because maybe your life is so miserable in your current position or employer that you won't be able to stay much more longer. But again, you don't want to be desperate, because nobody wants desperation, because then again, you may sell your soul to the devil and do things that are unethical, inappropriate, and not be you. But don't settle, be yourself, but realize there's opportunities out there, and it makes it very easy today to find those opportunities. As I mentioned, I could have been a fire chief had I taken advantage of other opportunities out there in other departments. I mean, if I was willing to move and I didn't care where I moved to, I know I could have been a fire chief, because I hear a lot of these. I know a lot of friends of mine that have become fire chiefs, and it's like, how did you get the job? And I don't mean that disrespectfully to them. And I hear some of these stories of, well, there's only like really 5 of us applying. And you know what? I was the best of the worst. I had a friend of mine literally saying that. He goes, I only had I didn't even have my 4-year degree finished. I never really served higher than a captain. But I guess I was told I was the best of the best out there. And it's like, you know what? I'll take the job. I'll get some experience, work here for a year or two. And you know what? Once the honeymoon phase is over, I'll probably go in another department and get some more experience elsewhere. Okay. Hey, who knows? But what would have been the best career to move in the long run? Who knows? All I know is that, I was fortunate to promote up the ranks. Sometimes I got promoted in the first try. Sometimes I had to take multiple tries. I wanted to be a fire chief. I tried. I put my name in the hat. It wasn't meant to be. And you know what? I can live with myself for that, because I see these fire chiefs or department heads, police chiefs, city managers, and you know what? Thankless positions in today's world. Seriously. More power to those people that step up, that are willing to take the bullets and be in those positions, because you know what? Being a leader, being a department head, especially at the top of the top of the pyramid, it's not what it's cut out to be, or not what you think it is. Politics, stress, pay, and you say pay, but they get paid the most. Yeah, but they don't get overtime. They're always on the clock. You'll make more money as a firefighter captain or battalion chief with overtime in most departments, with less stress and less headaches, because you can just check out on your 4-day, versus fire chief can never check out. Well, the fire chief goes on vacation for 2 months, so they're going to check out. No, they're not. Yeah. You want to be the fire chief that goes to Tahiti for 2 weeks on vacation and just turns everything off? You know what? I'm my well-deserved vacation. And then you get back to find out that you had a firefighter die in the line of duty. Yeah. Your assistant chief is acting fire chief. It couldn't have made the difference. It wouldn't have made the difference whether you were there or not. Don't get me wrong, and no disrespect meant. But what message is that going to send to your troops or your city manager, your boss? Hey, you just had a guy die in the line of duty. We couldn't get a hold of you. Well, my assistant chief was the acting fire chief. He's very calm and capable. He is, but you're the fire chief. Which the underlying message there is, this thing is always supposed to be on no matter where you're at. And you know what? You better be present. Even if you're not physically there, be present, be engaged. That's a lot of stress and responsibility. Just think about that if you want to have that top spot. Thank God we have people that are willing to do that. Sadly, though, some step into those top positions for the wrong reasons, ego, whatever. Do it for the right reasons and know what you're getting into, because it's 24/7, 365. And I don't think that was it for me in the long run, but you know what? I tried. I can live with myself. Hey, ultimately, there are plenty of opportunities for all ranks out there if you do your homework and your research, but be careful what you wish for, because guess what? It may happen, good or bad. So, as always, thank you very much for the gift of your time. Feel free to connect with me on social media, reach out. And if there's anything I can ever do, please don't hesitate to connect with me. All right, until the next episode, be safe and take care, everybody.